What happens a back-admired country music superstar meets his bout in television's best arguable host? You won't acquire what unfolds when Blake Shelton sits bottomlord for what was supposed to be a simple promotional appearance, abandoned acquisition himself trapped in an exact minefield that would end with him a fronted offset in advance of millions of viewers. This wasn't just another celebrity account gone wrong. This was an affected ambuscade that revealed the accurate attributes of daytime television's aphotic side. Before we get into this absurd story, accomplish sure you hit that subscribe button and beat a comment beneath, because you're not going to acquire what unfolds back two powerhouse personalities bang in the most atomic way possible. Last night's adventure of Jenna Bush's talk show started like any added weekday afternoon broadcast. The flat audience was active with excitement, knowing they were about to attest in country music royalty in the anatomy of Blake Shelton, fresh off his latest anthology Absolution, and riding Ariel on renewed success afterwards his recent career renaissance. The lighting was perfect. The cameras were rolling, and aggregate seemed set for what producers had promised would be an engaging babble about music life, and Blake's adventure back to his roots. Jenna Bush emerged from backstage wearing her signature Admiral suit. The practiced smile bashed aloft her face as she coiled to the audience. But those who knew her able-bodied could already sense something altered in her demeanor. Her eyes captivated a glint that, appropriate tonight, wouldn't be the archetypal feel-good celebrity babble that audiences had come to expect. She had acutely done her homework, and not the affectionate that leads to softball questions about accessible tour dates and admired songs. Ladies and gentlemen, Jenna appeared to the studio audience, her articulation accustomed that artificial activity that has become her trademark. Please acceptable to one and abandon Blake Shelton. The crowd erupted as Blake emerged from a BAFTA curtain, his signature cowboy hat slightly tilted, a flame that genuine smile that has charmed admirers for decades. He coiled to the audience, acutely in good spirits, absolutely blind to what was about to unfold. As Blake settled into the bedfellow chair, adjusting his jacket and exchanging pleasantries with Jenna, the atmosphere seemed cordial enough. The Aboriginal few account proceeded exactly as expected. Light badinage about his flight, adulation about his recent performances, and he accepted a back and forth that fills the aperture moments of any celebrity interview. Blake appeared relaxed, alike badinage with the audience about his latest fishing campaign, and how he'd rather be on a basin than in a television studio. "So, Blake," Jenna began, aptitude advanced hardly in her chair, "let's allocution about this amazing comeback you've been having. Your new album is advancing the charts. You're back in the spotlight, and admirers are loving this acknowledgement to your authentic country sound." Blake nodded, clearly pleased with the absolute administration the conversation was taking. He launched into an ardent account about rediscovering his agreeable roots and how important it was for him to get back to the honest storytelling that had made him acclaimed in the Aboriginal place. But then something shifted. Those who have studied Jenna's interviewing appearance know the signs. The slight pause, the way her smile doesn't absolutely ability her eyes, the subtle change in her aspect that signals she's about to pounce. "You know, Blake," she continued, her accent becoming noticeably sharper, "it's interesting that you acknowledge my authenticity, because there are some bodies who might question aloof how accurate this whole comeback anecdotal absolutely is." Blake's expression afflicted about imperceptibly. The accessible smile remained, but his eyes narrowed hardly as he approved to gauge where this was heading. "I'm not abiding, I follow you, Jenna," he replied carefully, his Oklahoma drawl becoming more arresting as it consistently did back he felt defensive. Jenna leaned back in her chair, acutely savoring the moment. "Well, let's be honest here. This isn't really your Aboriginal comeback, is it? I mean, there was that aeon a few years ago back your career hit some pretty significant bumps. Radio stations weren't amphitheater your music. Anthology sales were disappointing. And there were rumors about your claimed life affecting your professional relationships. Some ability say this accomplished acknowledgement to authenticity affair is aloof clever marketing to adjust an angel that had taken some austere hits. The tension in the flat became palpable. Audience members confused uncomfortably in their seats. Analysis that this had taken an unexpected turn. Blake's publicist, sitting aloof off camera, was frantically scribbling addendum and authoritative burning hand gestures to the assembly team, clearly trying to arrest him that this band of questioning was not what had been agreed upon in the pre-end discussions. Blake maintained his composure, but his knuckles were now white as he gripped the accoutrements of his chair. "Jenna, I think you ability be apprentice about a few things," he said, his articulation steady, but with a bend that hadn't been there moments before. "Every artisan goes through ups and downs. That's the nature of this business. But to advance that my music isn't accurate or that my career struggles were somehow my fault personally, that's bridge a line. Am I crossing a line?" Jenna tacked back, her voice ascent slightly. "Or am I just asking the questions that other interviewers are too affable to ask? Because let's face it, Blake, there are stories out there. Belief about behavior on set, about conflicts with other artists, about arrangement of difficulty that goes way aloft normal career fluctuations. And now, conveniently, aloof aback you charge at most, you begin adoration about getting back to your roots." The admirers was now completely silent. The affable atmosphere of moments afore replaced by an uncomfortable restriction that seemed to fill every bend of the studio. Blake's jaw anchored, and for a moment it looked like he ability bend up and airing away right afresh in there. Instead, he took a deep animation and leaned forward, matching Jenna's advancing posture. "You know what, Jenna?" Blake said, his voice now carrying an alarming edge. "I came here thinking we were activity to acquire a conversation about music, and maybe give your admirer's article absolute to talk about. But it seems like you had a different calendar from the moment I walked out here. So why don't you just cut to the hunt and acquaint me what this is absolutely about?" Jenna's smile widened, but it was bloodthirsty now, not welcoming. "What this is about, Blake, is honesty, something the ball industry could use a lot." Added of, "And honestly, I think your admirers deserve to apperceive the real story of BAFTA's improvement before they invest their hard-earned money in concert tickets and albums." The camera operators were accepting an acreage day, alternating amid close-ups of Blake's increasingly affronted announcement and Jenna's boastful smirk. This was exactly the affectionate television moment that would accomplish clips, headlines, and amusing media fizz for weeks. But as the restriction connected to build, it became bright that neither Blake nor Jenna was able to back down, and what had started as an uncomfortable exchange was rapidly ascent into something abundant added serious. Blake sat back in his chair, an alarming calm settling over his features. Aback, he spoke again. His articulation was quiet, but filled with almost independent fury. "You want honesty, Jenna? Here's some honesty for you. You've been sitting there for the accomplished 10 account aggravating to breach down everything I formed for based on what? Gossip, rumors, industry chatter from bodies who weren't alike in a room when whatever allegedly happened. The action was reaching an analytical point, and anybody in the studio could feel it. The air was thick with abhorrence as Blake's eyes locked onto Jenna's, neither one accommodating to give an inch. What happened to Budding would forever change how audiences beheld both the country music fable and the talk show host who anticipation she could break him. Jenna wasn't finished. In fact, she was aloof accepting started. "You allocution about rumors and gossip, Blake, but let's talk about facts. Let's allocution about the very real complaints that came from your own record characterization about Miss Flat Sessions, about producers who banned to assignment with you again, about the court of collaborations that fell through, because, and I adduce from an industry insider, Blake became absurd to work with." Blake's face ablaze red, the calm facade assuredly alpha to crack. "Industry insider?" he repeated, his voice dripping with disgust. "You beggarly coward who won't put their name behind their accusations? That's your abstraction of journalism. Jenna, bearding sources spreading poison. Bearding sources are how absolute belief get told in Hollywood, Blake. And you apperceive it." Jenna fired back, acutely acceptable every moment of Blake's discomfort. Bodies are abashed to speak on the almanac because they know there will be consequences. But the truth has a way of advancing out eventually, doesn't it? The studio audience was now absolutely captivated by the alternation Bones advanced before them. Some were recording on their phones, admitting the no recording policy, while others artlessly stared in shocked silence. This was not the wholesome afternoon ball they had signed up for, but cipher could attending abroad from the carnage. Blake stood up abruptly from his chair, aerial over Jenna, who remained seated. Her announcement won a barely buried satisfaction. You want to apperceive what the accuracy is, Jenna? The truth is that I've been in this business for over 2 decades, and I've seen people like you appear and go. Bodies who think that disturbing others bottomward makes good television. Bodies who adumbrate behind their microphones and anticipate that gives them the appropriate to abort careers and reputations. Sit down, Blake, Jenna commanded, her articulation articulate and authoritative. We're not done here. Oh, we're done, Blake attacked back. But he remained standing, his easily clenched at his sides. We were done the moment you decided to ambuscade me instead of having an absolute conversation. But aback you want to air dirty laundry on television. Let's allocution about your clue record, shall we? The blush drained from Jenna's face. This was not how the calligraphy was supposed to go. She was declared to be in control, allurement the adamantine questions while Blake squirmed in the hot seat. But now the tables were axis, and she could feel the ability activating alive in ways she hadn't anticipated. Let's talk about how abounding guests acquire absolved off your appearance in the accomplished year alone, Blake continued, his articulation growing stronger and added assured with anniversary word. Let's allocution about the complaints to the network, about your interviewing tactics. Let's allocution about how your ratings acquire been sliding, because people are accepting annoyed of watching you tear down anyone who sits in that chair across from you. Jenna's ambassador was now aimlessly signaling from behind the cameras, authoritative acid motions across his throat. But both Jenna and Blake were too bound in their action to pay absorption to anyone else. This had become personal, and there was no going back now. You anticipate you're some affectionate, a crusading journalist, Blake said, beginning to clip it back and alternating in front of Jenna's desk. But what you really are is a annoyer with a television show. You allure bodies on actuality under false pretenses. Pretend your activity to have an affable babble, and if fresh you attack them back, they can't avert themselves properly because they're guests in your house. This is my show, Blake, Jenna snapped, assuredly continuing up to match his energy. My house, my rules, and if you can't handle boxy questions, maybe you shouldn't be accomplishing interviews at all. Boxy questions? Blake laughed, but there was no amusement in it. Is that what you alarm appearance assassination based on bearding sources and industry gossip? Real boxy questions would be about my music, about my artistic process, about the absolute actuality of what I do. But you're not absorbed in that, are you? You're absorbed in bargain shots and gotcha moments. The action had now escalated to the point area both host and bedfellow were standing, adverse off across the baby coffee table that separated them. The camera operators were capturing every angle, every facial expression, every action that would later be dissected anatomy by anatomy across social media platforms and entertainment news shows. You appetite to apperceive what's cheap, Blake? Jenna's articulation was now raised about his all pretense of professional accord abandoned. What's cheap is advancing on actuality, and amphitheater the victim aback. There are legitimate questions about your behavior and your career. What's bargain is expecting everyone to aloof acquire your comeback story, afterwards allurement, any adamantine questions about what led to your atrophy in the first place. My downfall? Lakes' voice cracked with aphoretic anger. Lady, I've awashed millions of albums. I've had number one hits spanning 3 decades, and I've congealed a career that most artists can abandon dream of. If that's your analog of failure, a fresh-eyed hate to see what you exceed success. Success is honesty, Blake. Success is accountability. Success is owning up to your mistakes instead of rewriting history, to accomplish yourself attending better. Jenna was now pointing her finger directly at him, her face ablaze with the adrenaline of battle. And what we're seeing appropriate now, this anger, this defensiveness, this disability to handle legitimate criticism, this is exactly what bodies acquire been talking about behind bankrupt doors. Blake took a step closer to Jenna's desk, his voice dropping to an alarming buzz that somehow agitated added annoyance than his previous shouting. You appetite to see what people allocution about bankrupt doors, Jenna? Let's allocution about what bodies in this industry absolutely anticipate about you. Let's allocution about how agents acquaint their clients before they book them on your show. Let's allocution about how added hosts in this architecture abstain you in the hallways, because they're ashamed to be associated with what you call journalism. The admirers gasped audibly at this revelation. Blake had aloft a line now, effective from arresting himself to actively advancing his host on her own appearance in advance of her own audience. But he was acutely accomplished to the point of caring about after effects or professional courtesy. "You're out of line," Jenna said, but her articulation wavered slightly, betraying the aboriginal Abel in her aplomb back the interview began. "I'm out of line," Blake exploded. "I'm out of line. You invite me actuality beneath apocryphal pretenses. You attack my character. You advance rumors and illusion about my career and my personal life, and I'm the one who's out of band for arresting myself." The studio had collapsed absolutely silent, except for complete of the two combatants' heavy breathing, and the quiet were the cameras that connected rolling, capturing every moment of this unprecedented meltdown. Alike the production aggregation seemed frozen, unsure whether to arbitrate or let this play out to its assured conclusion. Jenna tried to achieve ascendancy of the situation, but it was bright that she had pushed Blake aloft the point of no return. "Blake, I anticipate we charge the booty a commercial break." And no, Blake cut her off, his articulation close and final. "No commercial break, no reset, no chance of you to regroup and amount out how to spin this. We're activity to accomplishment this right here, appropriate now, in advance of everyone. Aback, that's allegedly how you like to do business." The restriction in the allowance was now so thick, it was almost suffocating, and anybody present knew they were witnessing an article that would be talked about for years to come. What happened to Budding would not abandon end this adverse interview, but would fundamentally change both careers forever, creating a moment that would be replayed, analyzed, and remembered as one of television's best explosive confrontations. Blake looked directly into the camera, bypassing Jenna entirely as he addressed the admirers at home. "You apperceive what, folks? I appetite you all to see absolutely what affectionate a person your host absolutely is. This accomplished thing was planned from the beginning. She never advised to acquire a real conversation about music or my career. This was consistently meant to be an ambush, a character assassination bearded as an interview." Jenna's face angled with rage at actuality abandoned on her own show. "Don't you cartel about face your back on me. Blake Shelton, this is my show, and you'll acknowledge my questions or you'll get out." Blake spun about to face her, his eyes afire with acerbity that made several admirers' associates visibly flinch. "Get out." "Oh!" "Assurance me I'm accepting out. But not afore I acquaint anybody exactly what affectionate of operation you're running here. You appetite to allocution about authenticity? Let's allocution about how accurate it is to promise guests one blazing account and then bear article completely different. Let's allocution about how authentic it is to use bearding sources and industry account to abort people's reputations. Those sources are accepted, and you know it." Jenna attacked back, but her voice lacked the confidence it had carried earlier. Blake's argue had clearly ashamed her added than she wanted to admit. "Legitimate." Blake's laugh was absinthian and harsh. "You appetite to know what's legitimate? The actuality that 3 different guests acquire file complaints with the arrangement about your approach this year alone. The actuality that your own production agents acquire been attractive for other jobs because they're annoyed of being associated with this affectionate of trash television. The actuality that your ratings are in free abatement because bodies are sick of watching you abort careers for entertainment." The admirers was now murmuring amid themselves, some nodding and acceding with Blake's words, while others looked abashed at the revelations being aired on a live television. This had gone far aloft, a simple celebrity interview gone wrong. This was a complete breakdown of professional decorum that was advertisement, the ugly underbelly of daytime television. Jenna's ambassador was now frantically trying to get the absorption of the director, authoritative, atrocious Duke signals to cut the commercial. But the director seemed absorbed by the ball unfolding before the cameras. This was the affectionate of raw, unfiltered television that money couldn't buy. And anybody in the control allowance knew they were witnessing something unprecedented. "You anticipate you can appear on my appearance and advance me?" Jenna's articulation was acute now, all pretense of able composure completely abandoned. "You anticipate you can stand there and lie about my ratings, about my reputation, about my staff? I'm not lying about annihilation, and we both know it. Blake replied, his voice steady and controlled again, which somehow fabricated his words alike more devastating. The aberration amid us, Jenna, is that I'm accommodating to put my name abaft what I say. I'm not hiding behind bearding sources or industry insiders. I'm attractive you in the eye and telling you absolutely what I anticipate of you and your show. Blake afresh did something that no bedfellow had any time done afore on Jenna's show. He absolved over to her desk and leaned aloft it, bringing his face close to chastening as he battened in a voice that was almost aloft a whisper, but carried acutely through the studio microphones. You fabricated a big mistake today. Jenna, you anticipation you could bully me like you've afraid all your other guests. You anticipation I would just sit there and booty it because I needed the publicity for my album. But here's what you didn't calculation on. I don't need you. I don't charge your show. And I sure as hell don't charge to put up with your amateur hour appearance assassination. Attempts. Jenna proved to respond. But Blake captivated up his duke to blackout her. I'm not finished. You appetite to apperceive what the absolute adventure is here? The absolute story is that you've been so atrocious to create viral moments and controversial clips that you've abandoned what actual journalism looks like. You've turned your appearance into a gladiator amphitheater where you bandy celebrities to the lions for the ball of bodies who have nothing bigger to do with their afternoons. The country music star straightened up and looked about the studio, demography and the abashed faces of the audience, the Arctic production crew, and the cameras that were still rolling. And you apperceive what the saddest part is? You had it adventitious to do something elusive here. You could have asked me about my music, about my songwriting process, about the artists who afflicted me, about what it's like to assignment with the abutting bearing of country stars. You could acquire accustomed your audience article positive, something inspiring, article that ability have made their day a little brighter. Blake shook his arch in abhorrence as he continued. But instead, you chose to wallow in negativity and gossip. You chose to try to breach bottom-ward edition, who came actuality in acceptable faith. Cerebration, he was going to acquire a affable conversation about his passion. That says everything anyone needs to apperceive about who you really are as a being and as a professional. Jenna assuredly began her voice again, but it came out as a desperate shriek. Security. Get security and actuality appropriate now. I appetite him removed from my set immediately. Blake laughed. I 18-carat beamed this time as he reached up and removed his microphone pack, tossing assimilate Jenna's bore with satisfying thud. Save yourself the trouble, Jenna. I'm done here. But before I go, I appetite anybody in this audience and anybody watching at home to bethink this moment. Bethink what you saw actuality today. Bethink how your host treats bodies who appear on her show in acceptable faith. Bethink how she conducts herself a back edition assuredly stands up to her blowing tactics. As Blake began walking against the exit, Jenna fabricated one final atrocious attack to regain control of the situation. You can't just walk out on me. I'm not accomplished with you yet. Blake chock-full at the bend of the date and angry aback to face her one after most time. But I'm accomplished with you, Jenna. And afterwards today, I acquire feeling a lot of added bodies are going to be accomplished with you, too. The audience erupted into an admixture of applause and abashed gasps as Blake Shelton absolved off the set, leaving Jenna Bush continuing abandoned abaft her desk, her face ablaze with embarrassment and rage. The cameras continued rolling for several more seconds, capturing her stunned expression as she accomplished the magnitude of what had aloof happened. For the first time in her career, Jenna was completely speechless. She looked about the studio desperately, analytic for article to say, some way to deliver the situation, but the accident was already done. The most atomic action in daytime television history had aloof concluded with her bedfellow not abandoned walking out, but completely antibacterial her acceptability in the process. The administrator assuredly came to his senses and alleged for a commercial break. But it was too late. The accident was done, the moment was captured, and oral minutes. Clips of the action will be spreading across every amusing media belvedere and entertainment account aperture in the country. As the flat lights dimmed and the admirers began filing out in hushed, excited whispers, Jenna Bush was left standing abandoned on her set, the wreckage of her career broadcast about her like debris from an explosion. She had finally pushed too far, best on the wrong guest, an abstrusely adamant way that not anybody in Hollywood was willing to be a victim of her aggressive interviewing style. Blake Shelton, meanwhile, absolved out of that studio with his arch captivated high, his integrity intact, and his acceptability not only unscathed, but absolutely added by his refusal to be afraid on national television. He had apparent the apple, what it looked like a back edition, finally stood up to the affectionate of baneful behavior that had become all too accepted in entertainment media. The confrontation was over, but its pulse would be felt for years to come, fundamentally changing how both the industry and audiences beheld the relationship between hosts and guests, and proving once and for all that sometimes the only way to accord with a annoyer is to bend up and fight.